They fired me for taking my autistic daughter to the doctor. Now I outsell the entire office. That man thought he could yell at her, just because she walked in 5 minutes late. But what he didn't know was that her daughter had spent the entire night fighting to breathe, and between nebulizers, shivers, and fear, she didn't close her eyes even once. Her name is Rocío, real estate agent, single woman, mother of a little girl with severe autism and asthma, no partner, no support system. Just a calendar filled with more strike-throughs than actual days, and a paycheck that disappears the moment it arrives. By 6 a.m., she was already hand-washing her work uniform. By 6:40, her daughter Luna had another sensory meltdown. At 7, the nebulizer battery died, and by 7:15, Rocío was carrying her in her arms to the nearest hospital because no ambulance could make it in time. At 9, the child finally fell asleep in the waiting room, her head resting on her mother's lap. And Rocío, she only closed her eyes for 5 minutes. At 10:12, she ran into the office, still marked on her arm from the oxygen band. Her boss saw her, took off his glasses, and in front of everyone said coldly, "We don't work with excuses here, Rocío. You knew what time you were supposed to be in." She tried to explain, but his tone got sharper, more sarcastic, and in front of the whole office he snapped, "Your personal problems aren't the client's concern. If you can't keep up, maybe you should find something else to do." No one said anything. No one looked her in the eyes, and she swallowed hard, lowered her head and walked to her desk. But what that man didn't know is that this mother had learned to fight without witnesses, and that day would not be the end. Mr. Solomon, if you've ever been judged for being a mother, if someone ever talked to you like you were worth nothing, come sit with me, daughter, because this story is yours. And today it will be told right. If you've ever had to work twice as hard just to be seen as half, take a minute for yourself. This story might be closer to yours than it seems. Rocío didn't have her own office. She had a shared desk, a wobbly chair, and a computer that shut down on its own when it rained. Still, every morning she woke up before the sun. She made Luna breakfast, dressed her with love, and stepped out carrying her on her back, like she was carrying the whole world. Luna didn't talk much, but every time Rocío left for work, she'd draw her a little house with a big door and a golden key. "It's for you, Mommy." "And what's inside?" "You." That morning, Rocío pinned the drawing to the wall by her desk. It was her only window to home, but her boss, Mr. Dario, noticed. "What is this?" "It's a drawing from my daughter. This is an office, not a daycare. Take it down." She lowered her eyes and gently peeled it off. She folded it carefully, like she was tucking away her own heart. Dario was the kind of man who measured productivity in numbers, but never once asked what was behind each sale. He didn't know that Rocío showed homes with her daughter in her arms, that she took calls from hospital waiting rooms, that she signed contracts with one hand while holding an inhaler with the other. And still, she was the 3rd highest seller that month. But he didn't mention that. He just said, "A new executive starts tomorrow. I hope you learn something from her." Something broke inside her, not out of jealousy, but from the way her work was constantly erased. That night, Rocío came home later than usual. Luna was already asleep, and on the table she found another drawing, but this time it wasn't a house. It was a woman with a cape, a kind of superhero wearing her mother's uniform. At the bottom, in shaky letters, it said, "You don't sell houses, you open doors." And Rocío wept silently, because her daughter understood everything, and her boss, nothing. But the next day, a conversation in the hallway opened her eyes. "She just uses her kid as an excuse. She's not reliable. Still sells more than you. Yeah, well, I don't have to use pity to make sales." She stopped, took a deep breath, and knew she couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Mr. Solomon, what does a woman do when she's tired of swallowing disrespect? What happens when a mother finally says, 'Enough'?" She didn't sleep from exhaustion. She stayed awake because her soul was wide open. Rocío hadn't slept well in years, and not because she lacked a bed, but because her mind never rested. But that night, after hearing what they said about her, sleep simply didn't come. She held Luna close, ran her fingers through her hair, and thought, how much longer do I have to prove I'm enough? The next morning, she got to the office earlier than ever. Before the security guard, she cleaned her own desk, her computer, even the floor. That day, she set a personal goal to close 2 deals, not for company metrics, not for a bonus, but because she was tired of being seen as a burden. By 9 a.m., she was already showing a subsidized apartment to a young couple with a baby in arms. By 10:30, she was on a video call with an elderly woman, dreaming of leaving something to her grandkids. During the lunch break, her phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Luna's therapist. Hi, Rocío. Today your daughter asked for water in sign language all by herself. I just wanted you to know. She's making big progress. Rocío smiled. In the middle of all the chaos, that message felt like a hug in the middle of a storm. And then she thought, my daughter and we're making progress too. She returned to the office with renewed strength. She finished the paperwork, signed the contracts, and before 4 p.m. she had both deals sealed. She placed the folders on her boss's desk, not expecting praise, just a glance of respect. But he didn't even look up. He just said, and who watched your daughter today? She was with her therapist. And what if she got sick again? Rocío looked at him, firm for the first time. If I were a single father, would you ask me that same question? Silence. He didn't answer, and she didn't need him to, because something inside her had shifted. She was no longer asking for permission to exist, but the day wasn't over. Minutes later, in the bathroom, she found a small white envelope tucked between the paper towels. Inside was a note. It said, "You are not alone. I'm watching. Mr. Solomon. Sometimes, daughter, the walls hear more than we think, and sometimes a silent note speaks louder than 1,000 speeches. Want to know who left it? Come on now." The quietest person in the room was the one who'd been watching everything. Cubicle 12 was always quiet. It belonged to an older woman, short hair, big glasses, the kind who rarely spoke to anyone. Her name was Letitia. She had been at the company for 24 years, discreet, punctual, observant, and to most people, invisible. But to Rocío, she was the only one who never judged her. That same day, Letitia approached, just as everyone stepped out to smoke. "Can I talk to you, Rocío?" Of course. She led her to the archives room, between boxes and dusty records. And in a soft voice she said, "I know what you're going through. I was a single mother too, and they told me I wasn't good enough too." Rocío looked at her, eyes wide. Letitia continued, "That man, Dario, wasn't always the boss. He started as a sales agent, but when the owner's wife got sick, he married the daughter. That's how he climbed, not by merit, by convenience." Rocío clenched her teeth. Letitia went on, "In these files, there are reports he manipulated, sales he stole, goals he didn't meet, but no one says anything because he knows how to keep people quiet." Rocío felt her heartbeat pounding. Letitia looked her straight in the eyes and said, "But you don't owe him anything. You're good at what you do, and you're not alone." She handed her a folder. "Here are the receipts that show that sale he bragged about yesterday was actually yours." Rocío opened the folder. There they were, emails, documents, messages. Her boss had stolen her sale. Again. And for the first time, what she felt wasn't just frustration, it was rage with direction. Letitia gently closed the door and said, "Think carefully. Reporting him has consequences, but so does staying silent." Rocío walked out of that archive room without saying a word. Back at her desk, she found another drawing from Luna tucked in her things, a huge door with a blue key, and on the frame, one word, Mom, Mr. Solomon. When a mother sees the door and she holds the key in her hand, all she needs now is the courage to turn it. She didn't shout. She didn't break anything. She just wrote the truth. That night, Rocío didn't say a word. She stored the folder Letitia had given her, made dinner for Luna, and put her to sleep with gentle songs about calm seas and stormless skies. But inside her, a hurricane was raging. She sat at the kitchen table with the folder open, her chest tight, and a blank sheet of paper in front of her. There she began writing her internal complaint. No insults, no drama, just facts, dates, evidence. 8 pages. 8 trembling pages. The next morning she arrived before anyone else. She dropped a blue envelope with her name on it into the legal department's mailbox. Then she took a deep breath and returned to her routine. Calls, clients, floor plans, photographs. All while replying to Luna's therapist, trying to ignore the stares. At 3 p.m, Dario called her into his office. The door shut behind her. He looked at her with a cold smirk. "You think this is going to save your job?" Rocío said nothing. He lifted a copy of her complaint. "This just proves you're a troublemaker, and if you're going to play this game, you leave me no choice." She looked up. She was trembling inside, but steady on the outside. "Are you firing me?" "No, Rocío. I'm inviting you to walk out before this goes any further." She didn't blink. "And if I don't leave?" He shrugged. "Then we'll go the legal route. But you know how things work here. Single moms don't last long." Rocío left without saying another word. She walked back to her desk, and instead of crying, she opened her email. She wrote a short message to Letitia. "Thank you, but I'm not done yet." That night, Rocío picked up Luna from the therapy center. And when they got home, her daughter handed her a piece of paper. It was a key made of clay, crooked, bent, shapeless. But to Rocío, it was a Nobel Prize. "Mr. Solomon, they say when a woman decides to speak, the world shakes. But when a mother fights with the truth in her hand, not even the most corrupt power can silence her. You want to know what happened with that complaint? Then stay with me. The next chapter will tell you. Sometimes silence is not ignorance. It's just the world getting ready to shift." 3 days passed with no reply. No one called. No one asked her anything. But something had changed in the office air. Some glanced at her sideways. Others lowered their eyes when crossing paths with her. And Letitia, over in cubicle 12, would wink at her with quiet tenderness. On the 4th day, she was summoned by Human Resources. She was greeted by 2 women and a man in a grey suit who didn't say his name. "Ms. Rocío, we received your complaint. We're investigating the matter. Do you have anything else to add?" Rocío pulled out her phone. She played a recording. It was Dario's voice from their last meeting. "You know how things work here. Single mothers don't last long." The silence was thick. One of the women from HR nodded solemnly. The other told Rocío to wait for further news in the coming days. When she left the room, her body felt light, almost weak, like she had finally been able to set down a piece of the burden she'd been carrying for years. That afternoon, while waiting for the bus, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Ms. Rocío Perez." "Yes? This is the director of Del Bosque and Sons Realty. We received your contact from a former colleague, Letitia. We're looking for an experienced saleswoman, someone with empathy for seniors and special needs families." Rocío couldn't understand. "Excuse me? Your resume speaks for itself. And more than that, we heard how you stand up for what's right." She fell silent. The woman continued. "Would you be available for an interview tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Rocío swallowed hard. She looked at Luna, who was playing with a toy car with no wheels, and felt the world shift just a little in her favor. "Yes, I'd love to." That night, for the first time in a long time, Rocío didn't cry from fear. She cried from relief. And Luna, not knowing why, hugged her tighter than ever. "Mr. Solomon, when one door closes, God is already building another. And sometimes that door bears the name of a woman. What will happen at that interview? Will it be a new beginning or just another test?" She didn't show up in heels or a fancy car. She came carrying her whole life, with dignity pressed under her arm. Rocío ironed her one white blouse with care. She cleaned her shoes with an old rag and dropped Luna off early with the therapist. She had no car, took 2 buses and walked 6 blocks. She arrived sweating, heart in her throat, and dignity tucked under her arm. The offices of Del Bosque and Sons were bright, peaceful, real plants, soft music, and most importantly, no yelling. A woman with curly hair named Daniela welcomed her, offered water, asked her kindly to wait. Rocío looked around. Everything was spotless, and for a moment she felt like she didn't belong. But then she thought of Luna, of feverish nights, of the drawings, of the clay key, and she remembered she wasn't there by luck. She was there because of everything she had survived. The interview began. Rocío, someone we deeply trust spoke highly of you. We'd like to hear more about your experience. She spoke with calm clarity, no fluff. She said she'd been selling homes for 6 years, that her clients always came back, that she knew the working-class neighborhoods and the new developments, and yes, she was a single mother of a child with autism, but that didn't make her any less professional. Would you be available for a flexible schedule? She swallowed. I'm available, but I need Monday mornings protected. That's when my daughter has therapy. A pause. Daniela looked at her, curious, and then with something else, respect. Thank you for being honest, Rocío. Here we value people's humanity, not just their numbers. Rocío stiffened. Was this a gentle rejection? But just then, another woman entered, older, strong voice. You're Rocío Pérez. Yes, ma'am. I saw your reports. I saw how they treated you at your last job, and I saw how you stood your ground. Rocío didn't know what to say. We don't reward servitude here. We reward integrity. And you, Rocío, you have it. The woman extended her hand. Welcome to our team. Rocío froze. For a second, she thought she misheard. I'm hired already? As of this very moment, Mr. Solomon. Sometimes, justice makes no noise. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It shows up as an outstretched hand, and a door that opens without being kicked. But what will happen when her old boss finds out? Because some men can't stand to see a woman standing tall. Peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from being seen and respected. Rocío started her new job the following Monday. They gave her her own desk, a brand new laptop, and more important than anything else, respect. Her schedule was flexible. She had permission to take Luna to therapy, and her co-workers didn't whisper behind her back. They offered help. Every sale she made was credited to her. Every client she worked with felt heard, valued, understood, and for the first time in years, Rocío started to sleep well. A few days in, she received an email. It was from Leticia. Dario has been removed from his position. Human Resources uncovered more complaints. I owed you this, Rocío. Thank you for opening the first crack. Rocío read the message with tears in her eyes. Not tears of revenge, tears of relief. But that night, while cooking dinner, her phone rang. Rocío Pérez? Yes, who's calling? This is Dario. Her body tensed. I just want you to know. You destroyed everything. You didn't have to take it that far. Rocío took a breath. I didn't destroy anything. I just brought the garbage into the light. He hung up, and Rocío put the phone in a drawer, served up rice and beans, and had dinner with Luna like it was a Sunday afternoon. But that wouldn't be the last attempt. 2 days later, she received an envelope with no sender. Inside, just a blank sheet of paper. It said, You think you won, but this isn't over. Rocío clenched the paper. It wasn't fear anymore. It was anger. She turned the page over, and on the back, someone, perhaps Leticia, had written in blue ink, Fake keys make noise. Real ones open doors. Mr. Solomon, there ain't no threat strong enough to stop a determined mother. And if the past comes knocking, it's only to see if you still fear it. But Rocío, daughter, she's not that same woman anymore. What will she do with this threat, and how will life answer back? Fear knocked again, but this time she opened the door with fire in her chest. Rocío placed the envelope inside a black folder. It wasn't the first time fear had disguised itself as a warning. But now, she wasn't the same woman who used to tremble in silence. Now, there was fire in her chest. The next day, she asked to speak with the director of the real estate firm. She showed her the paper without dramatics. This arrived at my home. The director, a woman both firm and calm, read it without flinching. Do you know who sent it? I have a suspicion, but no proof. I'm not asking for sympathy. I just want to work in peace. The director looked at her with genuine respect, then opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Here, every employee signs a protection clause. If someone harasses you, inside or outside this company, we act without hesitation. Rocío signed without blinking. She walked out of that office with something she hadn't felt in years: security. But that wasn't the only thing that mattered that day. That afternoon, her phone rang. It was Luna's therapist. Rocío, I need to tell you something. What happened? Your daughter said a new word today. Clear, strong. She said, Mom. Rocío lost her breath. She had never heard that word from Luna, not even in her quietest dreams. But now, it was real. She ran home, held her daughter like the world could break at any moment, and through her tears whispered, Thank you, my love. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for teaching me how to keep going. That night, while Luna slept, Rocío pulled out a notebook. On the first page, she wrote in pencil, Where there was once fear, now there is fire. And below it, she drew a key, a golden key, like the ones her daughter always painted. Mr. Solomon, there are moments that don't need an audience, only heart. And when a mother hears that sacred word, Mom, for the first time, there ain't no enemy on earth strong enough to silence her. But daughter, there are still doors waiting to be opened. Some people sell properties, but she gave people the feeling of home. Weeks passed. Rocío became the top-performing agent at her new company, not because of fancy strategies, but because of honesty, because she listened, because she respected. She wasn't just selling houses, she was helping people find home, and her clients could feel that. One day, an older couple asked her to show them an apartment in the north side of town. They had no children. They were quiet, kind. At the end of the visit, the husband told her, Thank you for your time, miss. We can tell you do this with heart. Rocío smiled. It's just that I know how much it means to have a door you can close in peace. He shook her hand, and in his grip, something felt familiar. That same afternoon, back at the office, the director called her in. Rocío, I want you to read this. It was a contract, an offer to promote her to regional supervisor. It's not just because of your sales, it's the way you lead, the way you speak to others. Your story has inspired several women here. Rocío couldn't believe it, but that wasn't all. At the bottom of the contract it read, This position includes a pay raise, flexible hours for caregiving mothers, and access to an education fund for family members with disabilities. Her legs were shaking, but she didn't fall, because this time the shaking was victory. She walked to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, not to fix her hair, but to see herself, to recognize herself. She was no longer the woman who took verbal abuse, no longer the one hiding in the back row. Now, she was a leader, by merit, by endurance, by dignity. But that night when she got home, she found something unexpected. A package at her door, no return address. Inside, a laminated copy of her old termination report, with a handwritten note. This is how it all started. And below it, Thank you for proving the doors open when you stop asking for permission, Mr. Solomon. Sometimes the ones who humiliated you still watch you in silence, not to apologize, but because deep down they know they couldn't break you. Who sent that package, and what will Rocío do with this final piece of the past? Some papers hurt, but only the ones who survive them get to turn them into proof. Rocío stared at the laminated document like it was an old wound that no longer bled, but still burned. It was her former termination report, signed by Dario. The same paper that once knocked the breath out of her, the one that made her doubt herself. Now there it was, laminated, a mockery maybe, or perhaps a trophy. But Rocío didn't tear it up, didn't burn it. She kept it because she didn't want to forget where she came from. Because that paper, the one that once made her feel like less, was now the evidence that she made it. That very night, while giving Luna her bath, her daughter asked something unexpected. "Mom?" "Yes, my love? Can keys break walls too?" Rocío looked at her surprised. "Why do you ask that?" "Because sometimes you cry, and then something breaks." She held her tight, whispered in her ear, "Sometimes tears are the key, baby. A key that opens things no one else can see." And that night, Rocío had a strange dream. She stood in front of a giant house full of doors, but none of them had locks, except one, with a small hand carved into the wood, Luna's hand, and that's when she understood that little girl was her greatest door, and her purpose now was to keep opening her. The next morning, she took Luna to therapy. As she was leaving, the psychologist stopped her. "Rocío, your daughter's made so much progress. In 6 months, she's achieved what some kids take years to do." Rocío smiled through tears. "Do you know why?" "Why?" "Because now she sleeps in peace, and so do I." And as she walked back down the sidewalk, the sun warm on her back, she thought about all the times she believed she wouldn't make it. All the "you're not good enoughs," the "better stay home," the "you're a problem." And then there, on that cracked sidewalk but walking free, she told herself, "They didn't give me my dignity back. I reclaimed it." Mr. Solomon: "Some roads hurt, daughter, but once you've crossed them, you don't walk the same anymore. Because now you know how heavy your story is, and how much your silence was worth once you turned it into a voice. But wait, because there's still one last truth left to tell. Sometimes truth has no microphone, but it has eyes, watching for justice." It was an ordinary morning. Rocío was sorting through her files when she received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, a blurry image of Leticia, sitting in a cafe, with a caption, "She's the one who helped you. Now she'll pay." Rocío's stomach dropped. It wasn't fear, it was responsibility. She called Leticia right away. "Are you okay?" On the other end, that calm voice. "I'm fine, Rocío. I figured something like this might happen. But don't worry, people who send threats are the ones who've already lost." Rocío hung up and sat in front of her laptop. She opened a new email, titled it, "On the Integrity of Leticia Gutiérrez." She wrote a full letter, explaining how that quiet woman had helped her when no one else did, how she had the courage to expose the truth without asking for anything in return. She sent it to the entire company and to Human Resources. A few hours later, the email was forwarded by the director herself, with a note, "Today we publicly recognize Leticia for her integrity, her courage, and her example." The next day, Leticia was promoted to area supervisor. Rocío hugged her like someone hugs a sister who's returned from a long road. "Thank you for not staying silent. Thank you for not giving up." That night, Luna made a new drawing. It was a door, gigantic, but this time it wasn't closed. It had a key already inside the lock, and below it, in shaky little letters, she had written, "Wish her in." Rocío pinned that drawing to her bedroom door, and before going to sleep she kissed it, because now she wasn't on the outside anymore. Now she was the one holding the keys, Mr. Solomon. Sometimes the last door doesn't open with force. It opens with truth, with memory, with women who walk each other home without asking permission. But daughter, there's still the ending. And this one, this is the most important of all. She didn't need a title to tell her who she was, but the door still opened, with her name on it. The company organized an internal event. They called it Stories That Change Us. They wanted to hear from employees, but what they didn't know was, that afternoon they weren't going to hear testimonies. They were going to hear truths. The director approached Rocío quietly. "Would you be willing to speak?" She hesitated, but then she thought of Luna, of Leticia, and of all the women who wipe away tears and still close deals. "Yes, I will." She stood in front of everyone, no heels, no PowerPoint, just her story, and a voice that trembled but didn't hide. My name is Rocío Perez. I was fired for taking my autistic daughter to the doctor. They told me I was a burden, that I wasn't fit for this job, that my personal life didn't matter." She paused, looked them all straight in the eyes. But today, I outsell that entire office, and not because I'm better, but because I learned how to work without hiding and how to live without asking for permission." The silence grew thick, and then a standing ovation. Letitia was in the last row, her eyes shining. After the event, several new employees came up to Rocío. One said, "Today, I filed my first complaint because you gave me the courage." Another hugged her silently, then showed her a photo, a child with a disability. And Rocío understood everything without a single word. That night she walked down the avenue with Luna, no rush, like someone who no longer runs from anything. They passed an old rusty gate, and Luna asked, "Mom, does that door have a key too?" Rocío smiled. "All doors have keys, baby. You just have to find them, and have the courage to use them, Mr. Solomon. Sometimes, daughter, words are keys, and sometimes keys are women. Women who got tired of waiting and decided to open life with their own hands. But there's one last door waiting, the final one. She didn't return to the beginning. She turned it into a foundation for something new." The calendar marked 6 months since Rocío's first day at the new company, but to her, it felt like a lifetime. Everything had changed, her routine, her silence, her posture, which no longer bent, and her voice, which no longer trembled when she spoke the truth. Now, she walked differently. She no longer lowered her gaze, no longer apologized for existing, not for being a mother, not for having a daughter some called a burden. No, now she was respected, heard, recognized. That Monday, the general director called her early. "Rocío, I'd like you to come to the main office. We have something pending." She thought it was an evaluation, maybe a routine meeting. She brought her folder, her notebook, her coffee, black, no sugar. She took the elevator, just like so many times before. But this time, something felt different. The air was lighter, the stairs warmer. When she arrived, the director stood next to a closed door, a new one, with a small plaque covered by a white cloth. "Are you ready?" "Ready for what?" The director pulled the cloth, and there it was, Rocío Perez, Office of Human and Commercial Development. She froze. I don't understand." "This is your new office, and this, Rocío, is the space you opened, with your story, with your fight, with your dignity." Rocío couldn't speak. Something inside her cracked, but this time not from pain. It was like life was finally looking her in the eye. She entered the office. It was simple. A desk, 2 chairs, a shelf with books on communication, psychology, sales, and leadership. A green plant in the corner, and on the wall, a light wooden frame holding one of Luna's drawings, a giant door with a blue key. She covered her mouth with her hand. "How did this get here?" The director smiled. "Letitia gave it to us, said this represents you better than any award." Rocío sat in the chair behind her desk, not to work, to feel herself. She was no longer the problem agent, not the mother who always has excuses. She was now the woman who opened the first door for many others. That same day, she received over 30 emails from women across different branches. "Thank you for raising your voice. Your story pulled me out of silence. Now I know I can be a mother and be valuable." That afternoon, when she went to pick up Luna, the therapist met her with a smile. "Rocío, your daughter did something special today." "What did she do?" "We were drawing houses, and suddenly she said, 'My mom doesn't sell houses. My mom opens doors.'" Rocío couldn't speak. She just hugged her. And as they walked home, slowly, peacefully, she thought, "Lord, if this child only knew how much she's taught me without ever saying a word." That night, after Luna fell asleep on her chest, Rocío got up quietly, went to her drawer, pulled out the black folder, and opened it. There it was, the laminated dismissal report, signed by Dario, the same words that once made her feel small, unfit for the demands of the role. She looked at it, not with anger, but with compassion. That paper had no power anymore. She folded it, placed it inside a plain white envelope, and wrote in her steady hand, "Thank you for pushing me toward where I truly belonged." Then she placed it in the deepest drawer, not to forget it, but to remember how far she'd come. That Friday, during a company ceremony, Leticia was honored, and Rocío was the one to hand her the plaque. She believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And thanks to that, many others can now walk with their heads held high. After the ceremony, a young agent approached her. "Rocío, can I tell you something?" "Of course, daughter. I used to be afraid of becoming a mother, but now I'm not, because I saw you, and I realized it's possible." Rocío hugged her, and she knew she was no longer alone, because her story was now many stories. That night when she got home, Luna was waiting with a surprise. "Mommy, I made something." It was a model, a little cardboard house, crooked, uneven, but with a giant door in the front. "And what's inside, baby?" "You, me, and a bunch of moms who have keys too, Mr. Solomon. They said she didn't belong in that office, said she was weak, said her daughter was an obstacle that a single mother couldn't lead. But today, her name is engraved on the door she unlocked herself, not by luck, not by charity, but because life couldn't take away what she built with love. And if you're reading this with tears in your eyes, it's because your key exists too, daughter, and it's coming, because a closed door was never the end. Sometimes it's just God saying, the right key is on its way. She thought she worked for a man who held all the keys, but in the end, she was the one who carried the courage to open the right door. Some people said Rocío got lucky, that the timing was right, that she landed on her feet. But what they didn't see were the nights holding her daughter while she couldn't breathe, the mornings washing her only blouse by hand, the way her heart broke quietly, over and over, without anyone watching. She had walked through every kind of door, the cold ones, the ones slammed in her face, the ones she had to push with her whole body just to get inside. But now, for the first time in her life, a door had opened for her, and not just for her. Because every time she spoke up, every time she stood her ground, every time she looked someone in the eye and said, "I'm not leaving," she made it easier for another woman to do the same. Now, she wasn't just a mother, or a worker, or a survivor. She was a leader, not the kind that walks ahead of everyone, but the kind that walks beside. She was the kind that holds the door open until the last sister walks through. Leticia often came to visit her office. They'd talk about policies, rights, quiet revolutions, and sometimes they didn't talk at all. They just sat together, two women who knew what it meant to fight in silence. One afternoon, Rocío added something new to the shelf behind her desk, a small glass frame. Inside it, that crooked little clay key, the one Luna made with her tiny hands, and under it, a phrase written in black ink, "Where there was fear, now there is fire." She kept it there not to show off, but to remember, to stay grounded, to keep the promise she once made to herself, "I will never disappear again." And she didn't. She trained new agents, spoke at women's conferences, created internal policies for caregiving mothers, and opened more doors than she ever imagined. But her favorite part of the day was still walking home hand in hand with Luna. They'd count windows, guess what color the inside walls might be, dream up lives for the people they hadn't met yet, because Rocío still believed in home. Still believed in quiet strength, still believed in keys, not the ones that jingle, but the ones you carry in your soul. One evening, as they passed by a row of houses, Luna asked, "Mom, what if someone's door is locked and they don't know where the key is?" Rocío smiled. "Then we help them look for it, baby, and if we can't find it, we help them build a new one." Mr. Solomon, if this story reminded you of your own, let it live in the comments. Because sometimes, daughter, the door isn't locked. We just need the right key and the courage to turn it.